Welcome back, everyone. Earlier I uploaded a video and I was reviewing it. I realized that I should have put it into two different videos, one going over the genetics and one going over the 50s, and I think I tried to squish all of it into one video. And that's a result of trying to be very accurate on the fly. And it's like the genetic information is, that's a little bit more extensive research than looking into statistics from the 1950s and conformity and all that. So I fucked up on that one. I should have made that two videos, but what's done is done. And I could look further into the genetics in the future, well, for a future video, but we'll see where things go from there. So, I was looking through some other Gothic channels, and I noticed that the topic of what is Goth and what isn't keeps coming up. And this one chick, she spoke on, it was, like a live stream, I guess, or something. But what she said, I think I agreed with the most. She said that it shouldn't be like something, like you shouldn't have to force yourself into it. That if you have to force yourself into it, then it's probably not for you. But, it started making me think, like, I've never really talked about my journey into Goth. And for me, it flowed quite naturally. Like, my discovery into it came quite natural, and it's not anything that I had to force myself into. It's something that I fit into rather comfortably. Like, no, I don't go out to the clubs. I don't participate in any, like, scene or anything like that. I like to stay at home and be myself, especially anymore these days. It seems like ever since my brother died, that's me going out and socializing has been extremely difficult anyway. But I'm not really a social person. I like doing this. I like doing YouTube, and I like interacting with all the people. It's really great. I wish I could do it like as a career. I mean, I definitely have better content. I definitely do further research and have more information to give to people because I would spend time researching these things because I'm just naturally a curious person. But in the meantime, if that never happens, or if it does, but in the meantime, I have to focus on the job that pays the bills. You know what I'm saying? So I feel I'm doing this also because I feel bad for the lack of content. I try to make at least 3 videos a week, and last week I didn't really make any. And part of that is I have a pinched nerve in this shoulder. And what happens is my upper trap muscles become swollen and they spasm and they pinch a nerve cluster up here, and my entire arm just goes dead. It's I feel it in my elbow, in my joints. I'll have like a tingly, prickly like sensation, almost like you've lost blood circulation in it, lack of strength. Like when I first wake up in the morning, I'm not able to actually pick up a cup of water. I can't grasp it. And it usually takes a while for my arm to come back online after that. But that's from doing repetitive motion and doing very physical labor. As a result, it's caused the muscles to spasm and become swollen. And so sometimes it's hard for me to get motivated to do videos or really much of anything when you're constantly in pain. And it's nerve pain, so there's not a whole lot I can do about it. So on my descent into goth. So I was raised by hippies, and so growing up, I mean honestly, my dad, my parents, they didn't just listen to hippie music; they listened to punk as well, and so at an early age, I was exposed to hippie music and the hippie culture, and as well as the punk culture. I knew who Lou Reed was by the time I was 5, 7. I knew who Patti Smith was by that same age. Roughly around elementary school, kind of moving into middle school, kind of in that bracket. The end of elementary school to beginning of high school, I think is the big era of when I started stepping into the goth category or genre. But before that, I've always been fascinated by death. And I used to actually contemplate my own mortality. Like, I would repeat it over and over and over again in my head. Like, I'm going to die someday. I'm going to die someday. I'm going to die someday. Until I would have a panic attack and start freaking out. And, my dad tried to console me and say, nothing you can do about it. There's no point in worrying about something you have no control over. Of course, he's right about that, but always been very curious about that. I've always been kind of melancholic, and I like things that are somber, dark, dreary, eerie. I've had a fascination with the supernatural when I was younger, with ghosts. I've looked into multiple different religions because of this. Ultimately, I lost my faith in God at a very, very young age. I was probably about 7, between 7 and 10 years old. I didn't arrive at that conclusion because of my parents. I want everybody to understand this. Like, there were things in the Bible that I couldn't rationalize because my humanitarian sense was, I was just like, that is really dark and twisted and fucked up. Again, playing more into that dark kind of atmosphere of how I perceive the world around me is like, this is how people function, is the world is dark, it's cruel, and it's corrupt. And I never found a whole lot to be motivated or excited about. It seemed like the world is just full of junk. And like the concept of living forever just sounds boring and exhausting at the same time, like mentally exhausting. And I would think it wouldn't really matter if there's heaven or hell. If life is eternal, it's going to be hell no matter what, because there's no escape. So I got introduced at a young age to Edgar Allan Poe. I have a few English professors in my family, so I got exposed to some interesting literature. I loved Shelley Duvall's horror theater when I was a kid. And I also liked the Legend of Sleepy Hollow cartoon. Not the Disney one. There's another one that was made. And not too many people know about it, I think. But I really liked it. I had multiple collections of horror stories and Edgar Allan Poe works included in that, and I would have my dad read me those for bedtime instead of, I mean, he did read me Charlie and the Chocolate Factory once, but I would prefer the things like the horror stories, the ghost stories, and Edgar Allan Poe, things like that. And So like by this time, I know what my parents' music is. Mostly, it was just jam band hippie shit, and I'm like, I think most people grow to not like the music their parents listen to. But I always looked for, like, listening to radio and songs around me. I always looked for that embodied that sadness, that somber, that kind of old melancholy type feel. Um, the more they embraced that, the more I liked it. So I always sought that out, and I could never find enough. Like I'd find an artist that would do a song, and the rest of the album would be, fairly lighthearted. And I always went after albums for the sad stuff that they had, or the dark stuff that they had, not the happy things. So a lot of the things that I got when I was a kid, it was for a single song. And then as the 90s rolled around, I started getting into Nine Inch Nails, Tool, White Zombie, Korn, stuff like that. And, I thought it was okay. Like it tapped more into that, like, teen angst type of stuff. Silverchair, I really liked Silverchair because they had the angsty and they had the and they had the somber bits to it. And I did get into Marilyn Manson. And then roughly around the time that Mortal Kombat came out, I got exposed to KMFDM, and from there I found the industrial Rivethead stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of similar to Nine Inch Nails. And I saw where Nine Inch Nails kind of came from listening to that. So got into Ministry, Pig, KMFDM, Sister Machine Gun, shit like that. The dark wave and industrial stuff. And then everybody started calling me goth all the time. They kept saying, you're gothic. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Am I? I don't really know what. I guess. And so one day, like, I was at a music store, and I saw a Gothic tribute CD, and I was like, well, maybe there's more bands like KMFDM and Pig and Ministry, only maybe they play more on the somber elements rather than the angry elements, and maybe I'll find something that I like. Skinny Puppy. Like, that was a good find. Like, out of the industrial dark waves, like, Rivethead stuff, Skinny Puppy, I think they have a strong fan base in the goth community because of just who and how they are. But, so I put in this Gothic tribute CD. I start listening to this stuff, and I'm like, this doesn't sound like anything that I've ever listened to before. This is weird. But I started listening. I gave it a second chance, listened to it a few more times, and I started realizing, wait a minute. We've got bands with, like, pipe organs and cellos, violins, some very, like, Victorian Gothic-esque sounding stuff, and I started paying closer attention to the lyrics, and I'm like, this is really what I'm after. So, I mean, I never sought out to be labeled or defined. I think that was actually one of the questions in this thing that I was watching, was how they want to define themselves. If somebody asked me if I'm goth, should I say that? Is that okay? Personally, like, I've never cared. Like, I've not cared about the label that was given. Like, you could call it whatever you want. I just know, like, what you call emo, when I go and I look that up, it's not, I don't like it. But goth it's like, I go and I look that stuff up, and things that are labeled goth, I happen to like them. And I mean, like, it covers a lot of, like, how I feel internally. It covers a lot about how I perceive the world myself. And in some ways, I guess it kind of makes me feel like I'm not the only one that, sees the world as this really cruel, fucked up place. And so there I found my kind of niche in goth. And I'm not really concerned about the label. It's more like I felt more like everyone else was giving me that label, and I was just like, okay, I'll wear it. But I was just looking for something that was a reflection of how I looked at the world around me and how I felt internally, and goth happened to be that. So I think it's interesting that there's a group of people going around here trying to define what is and isn't goth. And, personally, I don't think you have to dress goth. I don't think you need to have, weird gauged earrings. I do that because I like to be eccentric. I like to be different. I don't think you need to do, the whole makeup and black attire. I do because I personally like black and red. That's why the intros of my videos, the words are always in red or black. They're either black with red outlining or red with black outlining. Those are my two favorite colors, is black and a deep blood red. I tried to dye my hair a blood red color one time, but my hair is too dark. I would actually have to bleach it first before I could do it. So, yeah, I don't know. I started listening to Christian Death, Evo Halo, and I think there was some Mission UK in there. And Mission UK, I was just kind of like, well, it's kind of poppy. And ventured off into things like Corpus Delicti and Brotherhood of Pagans. And even though I wasn't religious with Brotherhood of Pagans, I still really liked the sound, and I liked the lyrics, and I liked the dark atmosphere that they made in their music. I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was really great. And so the punk aspect and punk elements of goth never really bothered me, being that I was, around punks and hippies pretty much my whole life. I was like, yeah, I can get into it, and I actually really like it. And I think that they're very creative to incorporate pipe organs and cellos and dulcimers into their punk rock. That's actually pretty fucking cool. It gives it this nice, very eerie, Victorian-esque feel to it. And but still, I mean, it's strange to me that there's people going around thinking, is it okay to call myself goth or not? And I think that you should probably not worry so much about it and just be yourself. And if people call you goth, if they call you whatever, I mean, you don't have to stick to some label. You don't have to wear all this. Like I said, I actually do like black, and I've always dressed bizarre. Even when I was a little kid, I remember one time I wanted to go out with these ripped up shorts and these pants on underneath them, and a shirt that had holes all over the place on it. And I think I ripped socks and put them around my arms or something. I did something weird. I did some weird stuff. And this was when I was a little kid, in, 4th grade. And I would try to go and hang out with my friend, and my parents would be like, you can't go out dressed like that. That's, if I was your friend's mom, I'd be embarrassed to be seen with you. And I'm like, well, I don't care. I want to do this. I want to be weird. I want to be creative in how I portray myself. So I've always kind of been that way. I've always liked the dark things. I've always liked the gaunt look that I've seen in so many gothic artists. The black eyeliner, especially when it's smeared way under here, to make it look like your eyes are sunken in, and then like, especially if they put the pale face powder on and then like a very light blue lipstick to make it look like they're dead. I like the look. I actually like it. To me, it's like, wow, that looks amazing and cool. I really, really like it. And again, it's a reflection of how I feel internally and how I perceive the world around me. So that's why I do it, is because I personally like it. So that's how I exude myself out into the world now. Naturally, when anymore I'm old and lazy and I'm like, I just throw some shit on and walk out the door. But I've always liked, like, I like piercings. I'd have more piercings if I could, but many employers have not allowed me to do that. I actually always wanted a lip piercing. That has never come fruition. I wanted an eyebrow piercing. That's not come fruition. Still can't get those. Wish I could. Want them. Not big on tattoos, but I've always liked piercings. I've pierced my belly button like 3 times. These are everything I've pierced on my own. I've never gone to a professional to get anything pierced. I pierced my own belly button 3 times. I've pierced my ears. I did pierce my eyebrow once, but I ran into some problems, so I had to take it out. And that again, I did that myself. I've been cutting my own hair since I was 15, because I can't rationalize paying somebody to do it for me, and they never seem to get it right how I want it anyway. So I was like, fuck it, and I really don't care anyway, because it grows back. So if I get it wrong, I'm like, fuck it, it'll grow back. But no, I don't think you need to dress all in black to be goth. I think, to me, goth really is like a mindset, because like I said, for me, like I legitimately, like, not trying to be goth, but legitimately, I don't like to be out in the sun. I don't like bright, sunshiny days. The sun gets in my eyes and it irritates me. And believe it or not, like, you know, I'm sitting here, so as I'm recording this, it's 11 o'clock at night. I didn't even think I was going to get 2 videos out. I thought it was just going to be the one. I come, like, awake at night. Like, I really enjoy being awake at night. I like going for walks at night. I like looking at the night sky and the stars and the moon. I do not like going out during the day. And, I mean, it's not just the sun. Like, I've developed more rational, or not rational, but more higher functioning, like, reasons why. It's not just like, oh, the sun's bright and I don't like it. But I've also noticed there's less people out at night to bother me, and the people that are out at night are usually more interesting to talk to. They're usually more chill, more laid back. So I generally just like to be awake at night, and I'm not a big fan of days. I like rain. I like thunderstorms. They bring peace to me. Like, to me, they're relaxing. I love listening to a thunderstorm and just laying on my couch with the window open and just listening to it. Like, especially when it happens at night and, like, the lightning illuminates the sky, and it's just, you know, like this crackle effect, like shattering glass across the sky. And I light candles, and I'll just sit there and listen to like some of the instrumental stuff that Nosferatu has made, with like pipe organs and pianos and cellos and stuff like that. I like listening to that, and listening to a good thunderstorm. Like, to me, that's relaxing. Like, that puts me at peace and makes me want to, like, I don't know, just not sleep, but just it's very calming. I like that. I like horror films. I like horror stories. particularly pertaining to ghosts and things that are dead. I'm not a big fan of slasher gasher. So for me, it's very much like a lifestyle. Like this is my mindset. This is who I am. And so many people throughout my life have called me goth. Eventually one day I was just like, okay, fine, fuck it, I'm goth, whatever. I don't care. I seem to like the stuff that is called goth, so why not just carry that label, and so people get like a baseline understanding of who I am. But I don't think that should be the thing that defines everything who you are either. I mean, like, I created this YouTube channel, and you could call me a gothic YouTuber, because I am, but that is not solely the content that I produce. A lot of the content that I produce has more to do with, like, skepticism, philosophy. There's some science stuff in there. And originally I wanted to do some poetry readings, but those didn't go over very well. Every once in a while I will come out with like a horror story that I've created and try to put some effects in there. And actually some of the horror stories I'm telling, there's a couple of them that are true, but I'm not going to tell you which ones because I want you to leave that as a mystery. But some of them are true. Some of them are real, but the poetry readings that I did, they didn't do all too well. So I just stopped doing them. But you know, when I first came across social justice, I thought that was a conspiracy theory, and then I saw like it having real world effects. And so I started looking at their arguments and attacking that, and it was like, you know, it didn't seem very hard to me, but I guess I make it look easy, or I guess it's easy to me. I don't know. I don't really care. I don't really like. I'm not a person who likes to stroke my own ego. Don't get me wrong. Like, I like ego attention. I like ego petting, but I personally don't want to partake in it. It's just that. So, I mean, yeah, I am a gothic content creator, but the content I create isn't necessarily goth, but I do portray it in a gothic manner. So it's like, I don't know why goth can't get involved, like the goth community doesn't want to get involved in this, and why they're trying to stray away from calling themselves a counterculture and try to refer to themselves as a subculture. Because I don't think that's necessarily what it is. I mean, I guess it could be, but to me, it's really just kind of a way of life. Like, if I had it my way, I'd be living in a Victorian, like a real 17th century Victorian house if I could. Preferably one that was reportedly haunted. I doubt I'd see anything so far to this day in every so-called haunted place I've been urban exploring, and I haven't seen anything of that nature. But there's always that hope that the proof is out there, and you know, then you have that question answered in your mind about the afterlife. But until evidence has been given, I have no reason to believe. And in the 35 years of living, I have received no evidence to believe that there is anything other than this one life. And it seems rational. It seems to make sense, too. Scientifically, it's backed up. So, you know, for those out there who are wandering around going, should I call myself goth? Should I not call myself goth? I think you're thinking about it too much. I think you're focused too hard on it. I don't think the title is important. I think it's important to do what you love and love what you do. That would be my advice. Seek the things out that you get enjoyment out of, and don't get bogged down in trying to fit a mold. Don't fit a mold. Just be yourself. That would be my advice out there. So if people come along and say, well, this is goth and this is goth, but this over here isn't. If you still like that, who fucking cares? Do it. Be yourself. So I'm just glad to see that there are others out there that are interested in the more dark and cynical and glowery type stuff to create art that I personally enjoy, and hopefully I can make things that other people will enjoy as well. And you don't have to be goth to, watch my content. You can be, you don't have to be. And just the same as I think if you are goth, you don't have to surround yourself with goth people. You just have to surround yourself with people you like. So I think there's a misunderstanding that I'm really super into the definition of what goth is and isn't. And I'm really not. Like, I really don't, if you weren't to call me goth, though, you'd probably call me, like, a punk, honestly. Or a mix between a hippie and a punk, because I carry kind of ideas from both of those types of circles of people. So that's my story and how I got into goth. But if there's anybody out there struggling on what the meaning of goth is, like the actual traditional meaning comes from 17th century Gothic Victorian literature by people like Lord Byron, the Shelleys. There was Percy Shelley and Mary Shelley. You have some great works by Washington Irving. I don't remember all the Gothic writers from back then. There was this other Gothic writer. I really wish I could remember his name. He wrote this beautiful poem about, I think he wrote it, he might have wrote it from the perspective of his own or the perspective of a female. I don't remember, but the character in the poem was looking out of their window across, like, they had one of those window ledge hangers where you could put flowers in, and looking beyond that to see, I think it was from his perspective, because he was looking over these flowers to see, so beyond life and beauty, and in his backyard was like his wife's grave, and it brought him tremendous sadness. It was a beautiful poem, beautiful poetry. I really enjoyed it. I really wish I could remember who wrote it, the name of him, and the name of the poem. But I read that back in 2001. So it was 18 years ago that I've read that poem. So I don't remember who wrote it. Don't remember the name of the poem. I just know I really liked it. I've liked anything I've read, any poetry I've read that's been Gothic romantic poetry from the 17th century. I've liked it. So that's the traditional definition of what goth is. It comes from 17th century. Before that, you have Gothic architecture. And before that, you have the Visigoths, but I doubt that any of that has anything or vaguely much to do with what the goth scene is today. And I'm not so much into scene as I am into a lifestyle of I like dark things. That's just the way it goes. So like I said, I made this video to kind of put some more content out there because I feel bad about last week. I didn't even think I was going to get this. I didn't even think I was going to get a second video. But it looks like it might be possible that tomorrow the Gothic Republican might be doing another live stream with me. So we'll see. And again, I apologize about the previous video. I really should have split that into 2 videos, making one about the genetics argument and making one about the 50s conformity argument. I really should have split those into 2 different videos, and I apologize that I didn't do that. And I should have done more. I should have had a better idea of what I was going to talk about in the genetics to better articulate that, because I don't think I did a good job at articulating the genetic argument very well. And the thing is like I don't script my videos. There's a few of them that have been, but like 3 maybe. I like the free-flowing beatnik thought, and if there's any punks, old school punks out there, if you caught the reference, the name of the band Beatific Smile is a reference having to deal with beatnik poets from back in the 1920s, which is where a lot of this underground movement started. You have the beatniks moving in through the 1920s into the hipsters, into the hippies, and then into the yuppies, and then you had the punks spring out and the goths spring out, and that's where that term Beatific Smile comes from. It's kind of an embodied word of like things that are counterculture and underground. So I was seeing if Reverend Aaron from Punks for Progress would catch that. Try to be like, look, you know, remember the roots here is that we're supposed to be counterculture, not mainstream culture. Pop culture should be pronounced poop culture. That's just my personal opinion. You can be a pop person if you want and still enjoy my content. Do what you love and love what you do. So I thank you to everyone out there that subscribes. Can't believe I've gained subscribers. I'm happy with how my channel is done, the direction it's gone, and I think I've been doing better at making content. It's gotten easier for me, like knowing what I want to do and editing. But again, I really do apologize. That last video should have been 2 videos, and I should have been more prepared on what I was going to say and to what I was going to articulate about the genetic argument in that one, because there's a lot of arguments to be made against any kind of isolation of a racial segregation. That's actually really, really bad for humankind. It's terrible for humankind. So, just going to reiterate this, though, that no race should be on a pedestal. It is not an achievement to be a race. It's not an achievement to have a sexual orientation. We're all just people, and we're all trying to make the best out of this hell. We're trying to basically create a heaven when all we have to work with is hell. It's like, okay, I'm going to try to build a nice comfy bed out of fire and brimstone and try to make it as comfortable as possible. So, you know, stop trying to be shitty to other people and let each other live. It's as simple as that. Keep reiterating the philosophy. I believe in choices, not one's ability to impose one's will on others against their own will. Like, share, subscribe, comment, hit the bell button on any channel you're subscribed to. And with that, I'm out.
Autumn leaves blowing across my floor. next door.